Tycoon mocked his wife's pregnancy. Now she lives in luxury with his hidden children. The city lights sparkled like diamonds scattered across the night sky, but Yoon Jia didn't see them. Her eyes were fixed on her trembling hands, tightly gripping the hem of her simple cream-colored dress. Tonight, she was marrying one of the wealthiest men in the country, Kang Min-ho, the heir to the powerful Kang Corporation. Yet, her heart felt anything but celebratory. The grand ballroom shimmered with golden chandeliers and marble floors that echoed the soft click of polished shoes. Everything looked like a fairy tale, except for the bride and groom. Min-ho stood across from her, tall, refined, and cold as stone. His tailored black tuxedo framed a man who seemed carved from ice, his eyes scanning the crowd with boredom, never once resting on Jia with warmth. She looked at him, searching for something, anything, that resembled comfort. But all she found was a stranger. He barely moved when the officiant asked if he took Jia as his wife. "I do," he said flatly, not even meeting her eyes. Jia whispered her vow with shaking lips. "I do." They kissed, or rather, Min-ho lightly touched her cheek with his lips, no affection, no tenderness. The cameras flashed. The guests clapped. And Jia felt her soul begin to break. Behind that picture-perfect moment was a cruel truth: their marriage was not born of love, but of convenience. Her family had gone bankrupt after her father's sudden death, and her mother, desperate to protect what little dignity they had left, had begged the Kangs for help. The deal was simple: Jia would marry Min-ho, and in return, her family's debt would be forgiven. She had agreed, believing, hoping, that love could grow. That Min-ho, though distant, could someday come to care for her. That perhaps, she could give him something real in the midst of a life dictated by business mergers and social appearances. But from the first night in their luxurious penthouse, Jia understood exactly where she stood. "You don't need to act like a real wife," Min-ho said as he loosened his tie, his back to her. "Just stay out of my way, show up to family events, and don't embarrass me." Jia tried to smile, tried to play the role expected of her. Maybe we could have dinner together? Get to know each other." "I don't need to know you," he snapped without turning around. "We signed a contract. That's enough." Her smile faded. Days turned into weeks. Jia moved through the house like a ghost, eating alone, sleeping alone, smiling alone. She decorated their home with soft colors and warm lights, hoping to create a space that felt like a real home, but Min-ho barely noticed. He spent his nights at work, or worse, at private clubs, always returning in the early hours smelling of perfume and liquor. Still, Jia held on. One rainy night, she waited by the window long after midnight. The clock ticked endlessly. Her dinner sat cold on the table. Finally, she heard the door open. Min-ho walked in, his coat dripping wet, face blank. "You're late," she whispered, trying to sound casual. "I didn't know I had a curfew," he replied, tossing his keys on the table. She hesitated. I wanted to tell you something." He looked at her, visibly annoyed. "What?" Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was deafening. Jia's heart pounded in her chest, her eyes shining with the faintest hope. But Min-ho's face darkened. "Pregnant," he repeated, like the word was poison on his tongue. She nodded, trying to smile through the fear. "Yes. I just found out this morning. I was scared at first, but I think this could be a blessing. Maybe this baby can bring us closer." Min-ho scoffed, an ugly, hollow sound. "You did this on purpose, didn't you?" he said, his voice rising. "You think having a baby will tie me to you? That I'll suddenly fall in love with you and play happy family?" Jia's eyes widened. "No, that's not what you really think you can trap me with a child?" he interrupted, laughing bitterly. "God, you're just like everyone else. Desperate for money, clinging to anything that keeps you in this house." Tears burned behind her eyes. "Min-ho, I didn't plan this. I just wanted to share it with you because you're the father. This is your child too." His glare was ice cold. If you care about this child, you'll get rid of it. Jia staggered back like he had slapped her. He didn't stop. I won't have a bastard child ruin my reputation. You think my family would accept a baby born out of this joke of a marriage? Don't call our child a bastard, she cried. This baby is innocent. Minho walked past her, shaking his head. Get rid of it, Jia. I'm not going to be a father. And if you insist on keeping it, don't expect to stay here. The door slammed behind him. She stood alone in the middle of the room, shaking, one hand clutching her belly, the other covering her mouth to stop the sob that threatened to tear her apart. The rain beat against the windows like thunder. Her heart screamed in silence. That night, Jia didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker through the tears. Her world had collapsed, the fragile hope she held, the dream of a family, the idea that love could grow where it had never been planted, all of it shattered. But amid the pain, something inside her shifted. She pressed her hand against her stomach and whispered, I won't let him destroy us. You didn't ask to come into this world, and I will never let you feel unwanted. I will protect you, no matter what it takes. Outside, the rain poured relentlessly, but within her, a new resolve was born. Not for revenge. Not for pride. She packed quietly, folding clothes with steady hands, not because she wasn't hurting, but because every movement was a promise to the child she now carried. She took nothing extravagant, only what was hers before the marriage, a worn coat, a small jewelry box that belonged to her late father, and a bundle of baby books she had impulsively ordered a week ago, now heavy with irony. Her wedding ring, a cold circle of gold, she placed gently on the marble counter near Minho's watch. A final farewell. She left without a word. No note. No scene. Just silence. The taxi pulled away from the luxury building, carrying her into the unknown. 3 hours later, Minho returned. He noticed the silence first, then the absence of her perfume, then the ring. For a moment, something cold passed through his chest. But he shook it off. Coward, he muttered. Yet, that night, he didn't sleep. Jia took refuge in a small coastal town, far from Seoul, where no one knew her name or her story. She found a tiny apartment above a bakery run by an older widow who offered it for a modest rent. In exchange, Jia helped in the shop during the mornings, the scent of fresh bread mixing with the salt of the sea air. The town was quiet. The people didn't ask questions. And Jia was grateful. Her belly grew slowly, each month a silent triumph. She documented everything in a journal, wrote letters to her unborn baby that she never planned to send. She kept every ultrasound photo, every whisper of a heartbeat, as sacred proof that she was not alone. One rainy night, not unlike the one when she left, she pressed her hand against her stomach and felt a flutter, like a soft kick, delicate and new. Her breath caught in her throat. You're really there, she whispered, smiling through tears. I'm not just dreaming. But the pregnancy wasn't easy. The solitude, the work, the stress, it began to take a toll. One morning, while sweeping the bakery floor, pain shot through her abdomen like lightning. She collapsed before she could cry out. She woke in the hospital, pale and disoriented, with machines humming beside her. The doctor explained she had been severely dehydrated, her blood pressure dangerously low. We almost lost the babies, he said. Jia froze. Babies? He nodded gently. You're carrying twins. Tears spilled from her eyes, not just from fear, but from awe. 2. She was going to have 2 children. 2 hearts inside her, beating because she refused to give up. After that, she slowed down. The widow who owned the bakery insisted Jia rest, and neighbors, touched by her quiet strength, began bringing food, helping her with errands. No one asked who the father was. No one judged. They just helped. On a quiet evening, Jia sat on the balcony of her apartment, wrapped in a wool blanket, watching the sea. I'm scared, she whispered to her belly. But I'll love you enough for both of us. I'll raise you with everything I have. You won't need his name. You won't need his money. You'll have me. She gave birth months later in that same small hospital. It was painful, terrifying, and breathtaking. She named them Seo-jun and Hannah. A boy and a girl. They had his eyes, that sharp, almond shape, but her softness. She held them both to her chest, sobbing with relief and disbelief. She had brought them into the world. Alone. Against everything. And they were perfect. As the years passed, Jia built a life, brick by brick. The bakery grew. With the help of her landlord and some supportive locals, Jia introduced a line of traditional pastries with a modern twist. Word spread. A food blogger passing through town praised her creations online, and orders began pouring in. She expanded, opened a small cafe beside the bakery. A friend she had once helped in university, now a successful entrepreneur, offered to invest. She accepted with cautious hope. By the time the twins were 5, they lived in a modest but beautiful home near the sea, with sunlight in every room and laughter in every corner. Jia walked them to school each morning, holding their small hands, heart bursting with love. Still, there were moments. Moments when she passed a man in a suit on the street and her breath caught. Moments when Hannah asked why they didn't have a father like the other kids. Jia never lied, but she chose her words carefully. Your father and I, we weren't meant to be, she would say softly. But I have no regrets, because I got the two of you. Seo-jun, wise beyond his years, once wrapped his arms around her and said, "It's okay, Mom. We don't need anyone else." But in quiet nights, Jia would look at their faces as they slept and wonder if Minho ever thought of her. Of them. Did he regret? Did he feel even a sliver of pain? She shook those thoughts away. She had made peace with the past. Or so she believed. One summer afternoon, while attending a charity event in Busan where her cafe was donating baked goods for a children's hospital, Jia found herself standing on a stage, presenting a check beside other local entrepreneurs. The crowd clapped politely. She bowed humbly. And then, she felt it. A presence. A shadow. She looked up, and her breath caught. In the crowd, dressed in a dark tailored suit, stood Kang Minho. Older. Sharper. But unmistakably him. Their eyes met. His expression didn't change. But his posture stiffened, his jaw tensed. He hadn't seen her in years, and yet, here she was. Elegant. Radiant. Alive in a way she had never been under his roof. Jia forced herself to look away and step down from the stage, her heart racing, palms clammy. She felt like the girl from years ago, scared, small, broken. But then she remembered. She wasn't that girl anymore. Minho watched her from a distance, his gaze unreadable. He had come to the event through a last-minute invitation from one of his business contacts. He hadn't expected anything unusual. But the moment he saw her, everything else faded. Jia. Alive. Successful. Smiling. And beside her, 2 children. Twins. A boy and a girl. Around 5 years old. They had his eyes. Minho's heart stopped. He couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Was it possible? Had she? No. It couldn't be. If they were his children, why hadn't she said anything? Why hide them? Unless they weren't his. Unless she had lied all along. But the doubt clawed at him. He needed to know. He had to know. The questions burned hotter than any shame or guilt he had buried. Jia, oblivious to his thoughts, held her children's hands and walked toward the car waiting at the curb. Minho took a step forward. But something in him held back. He would not confront her here. Not yet. He had spent years convincing himself that Yoon Jia had been a mistake. That marrying her had been a weakness imposed by his father's business games. That her pregnancy had been a trap. that walking away was the right thing. The only thing. But now, after seeing her again, after seeing them, nothing made sense anymore. Those children. The boy's eyes. The girl's laugh. The curve of their cheeks. The way the boy had protectively placed a hand on his sister's shoulder as they moved through the crowd. It was like looking at pieces of himself split in two. He hadn't imagined it. He couldn't have imagined it. He sat in the dark, elbows on his knees, fingers pressed against his lips. Could she really have kept them from him? And if she had, could he blame her? He remembered that night too clearly. The fury in his voice. The disbelief. The way he had thrown her out without even giving her the chance to explain. That night, he hadn't just broken a promise. He had crushed something fragile and real before it even had the chance to grow. Now she was gone. Moved on. Living a life far better than anything he had given her. And those children, they looked happy. Minho gripped his hands together tightly, trying to quiet the guilt clawing through his ribs. For the first time in years, he didn't feel powerful. He felt like a man chasing the shadow of something he once had but didn't know how to hold. The next day, he did what any desperate man would do. He hired someone. I need everything on her, he told the investigator across from him at a discreet restaurant. Where she lives. What she does. Who she's close to. And especially, the children. The man raised an eyebrow. Is she threatening you in any way? No, Minho said after a long pause. She's not threatening me. She's hiding something. Jia, meanwhile, continued her life with quiet grace, unaware that her past was rising like a storm behind her. The twins had grown curious about the man they had seen at the event. Mom, Hannah asked one night as Jia combed her hair after bath time, who was the man at the fundraiser? The one who kept looking at us? Jia's fingers froze for a moment in Hannah's curls. I don't know, she said softly, resuming the strokes with careful gentleness. Probably just someone from the companies that helped the hospital. Seo Jun tilted his head. He looked angry. Not angry, Hannah corrected. More like, sad. Jia swallowed. Sometimes people remember things when they see others. It can make them look a little lost. Seo Jun didn't seem convinced. He looked like me. Her hand trembled slightly. She set the brush down and turned toward her son, kneeling. You look like you, she said, brushing her knuckles against his cheek. You look like the most wonderful boy in the world. He smiled. But Jia didn't. That night, after they had fallen asleep, she stared at the photograph tucked in her drawer. An old wedding picture, yellowed by time, the edges curling. She hadn't looked at it in years. She shouldn't have kept it. She thought she had buried that life long ago. She didn't know that Minho had already begun to dig it up. A week later, Jia noticed something strange, a man across the street, pretending to read a newspaper outside the cafe. Then, a woman came in asking too many questions about her pastry suppliers, but never ordered anything. Later, the school called her, saying someone had been parked outside the playground 2 days in a row. Her stomach turned. The past was circling. She called her old friend, Xian Wu, the entrepreneur who had helped her launch the cafe. He had always been protective. I think someone's watching me, she said, voice low, filled with tension. Do you want me to take care of it? He asked immediately. No, she said after a pause. Not yet. But if anything happens to the kids, I'm here, he promised. That same night, Minho received the full report. She lived in a small seaside town. Owned a popular cafe. Had never remarried. No romantic ties. The twins were indeed born 7 months after she left. No birth certificate on public record under his name. The final page of the file showed 2 photographs. One of Seo Jun, playing with a soccer ball outside their home. One of Hannah, laughing, her braids flying in the wind. Minho stared at those pictures for what felt like hours. His children. His blood. And he hadn't known their names until now. He put the papers down and gripped the edge of his desk. Something inside him cracked. He remembered Jia standing in the rain, tears in her voice as she said, "This baby is innocent." He had called them a mistake. Now, he couldn't sleep at night knowing he'd missed every first step. Every birthday. Every scraped knee, every bedtime story. They would never know how hard he had worked to build his empire. But also, they would never know how much he had destroyed in the process. The next morning, Jia received a letter. It was hand-delivered. No return address. No stamp. Just her name. She opened it with trembling hands. "I saw them. I saw you. I don't know what I have the right to say anymore. But I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for the truth." No signature. But she knew. Her hands dropped to her lap, letter trembling between her fingers. So he knew. He had seen them. And now, he wanted answers. Her heart pounded in her chest, but it wasn't fear. It was fury. Because now he wanted the truth? After all these years? After she had begged him to listen, after he had mocked her, thrown her love into the fire and walked away? She stood, letter crumpling in her fist. Not here. Not now. Not after everything. If he wanted the truth, he would have to come face it himself. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the window again, like she had years ago, staring out at the same sea but feeling entirely different. Stronger. Wiser. But still haunted. She read the letter again, slower this time, as if maybe a second reading would reveal some hidden emotion he had buried between the lines. But it was still the same, regret wrapped in control. He hadn't apologized. He hadn't begged. He asked. And that made her blood boil. He saw them, her children, and still believed he had the right to ask for anything. But her heart was trembling, no matter how much she willed herself to be still. The next morning, she stood in front of the mirror and buttoned up a crisp white blouse. She tied her hair back, applied a touch of soft rose on her lips, and stepped into heels she hadn't worn since a press event 3 months ago. She looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back was composed, elegant, even. But her eyes? Her eyes were fire. "Mom?" Hannah called softly from the doorway. "You look serious." Jia turned, kneeling to her daughter's height. "I have to go out today. But Xianwu will pick you up after school, okay? Is something wrong?" She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "No. Just something I need to finish." At the cafe, she left a note for her staff, asking them to handle the day. Then she called a driver and gave him a hotel name. Minho's Hotel. Her hands were cold the entire ride. She didn't message him. She didn't warn him. If he wanted the truth, he could face it directly. The hotel lobby was sleek and quiet, and the staff immediately recognized her. One of the young receptionists whispered something to the concierge as Jia stepped forward. She asked for Mr. Kang's suite. "I'll announce you," the woman said quickly, picking up the phone. "No," Jia interrupted. "Just tell him it's Yoon Jia. And that I'm not here to talk." The woman's hands trembled slightly as she relayed the message. Moments later, the elevator was opened for her. Her heels clicked against the marble floor of the hallway. She could hear the sound echo in her chest like a war drum. At the end of the corridor, a man in a suit opened the door. He didn't smile. He simply stepped aside. She entered. Minho was standing by the window, hands in his pockets, wearing a gray shirt and black slacks. No tie. No armor. Just the man he was when no one was watching. He turned slowly when she entered. Jia didn't say a word. Neither did he. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. And in that silence, the years spilled in like a flood. The nights she had cried, the pain she had swallowed, the children she had raised alone, the loneliness he had buried, all of it pressed between them like a wall made of ghosts. He finally spoke, voice low, unsure. "You came." "I didn't come to make peace," she said. "I came because you said you wanted the truth. And I don't owe you a single word. But I will give it to you, not for you, but for me." Minho's eyes flickered, but he didn't move. "You left me when I needed you most," she continued, her voice trembling now. "I told you I was pregnant. I was scared. I was desperate. I thought maybe that would change something in you. I didn't expect love. Just humanity." He opened his mouth, but she cut him off with a look. "You mocked me. Accused me of trapping you. Do you know what it feels like to be called a liar by the person whose child you carry? To be told to erase that life like it meant nothing?" Her fists clenched. "I walked out of your house bleeding inside. Not just my heart, my body. I nearly lost them once. I laid in a hospital bed with machines trying to keep them alive while you were out closing deals and sipping champagne." Minho stepped forward. "I didn't know, you didn't want to know," she hissed. "Because if you did, then you'd have to feel guilty. And guilt doesn't fit into your carefully calculated life, does it?" His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. "I gave birth to twins. Alone. I named them without your name. I raised them without your money. Every birthday, every fever, every broken toy, it was me. When Hannah scraped her knee and begged for her dad, I held her. When Seo Jun cried in the night because he thought he was different from other kids, I lied to him, to protect you." Her voice cracked. "I protected the image of a man who never once protected me." Minho's face twisted in something that looked like pain, real pain. "I don't know how to say sorry for all of that," he said hoarsely. Jia looked at him, eyes sharp. "You don't get to say sorry. Not yet. Because sorry is what people say when they want forgiveness. And this," she pointed at her heart, "isn't ready to forgive." He lowered his gaze, shame flooding him. "I don't want to take them from you," he said finally. I saw them, Jia. And something broke inside me. I didn't know I could feel this empty." Her breath caught. "You left me empty," she whispered. "And now you know how it feels." She turned toward the door, her hand on the handle. "I won't stop you from seeing them one day. But not like this. Not through lawyers. Not through investigators. If you want to know them, you'll earn it. The right way." He took a step forward. "Can I at least know their names?" She hesitated. Then, without turning, she said softly, "Seo Jun and Hannah." A beat of silence. "They have your eyes," she added, a touch of bitter irony in her voice. "And my stubborn heart." The door closed behind her. Minho stood alone, his hands shaking for the first time in years. Not from fear. Her employees noticed the quiet in her eyes. She smiled, answered kindly, but her mind wasn't there. It was in that hotel room. In the way Minho's voice broke when he said he hadn't known. In the way he stood frozen after she whispered their children's names like a wound reopened. She didn't regret what she'd said. But now that the dam had broken, there was no holding back the tide that was coming. And she could feel it coming. That afternoon, while she wiped down tables after the lunch rush, her phone buzzed. A message. "I understand now. I'm not asking for permission. I just want to see them. Even from a distance. Once." She stared at the screen, her fingers curled tight around the phone. A part of her wanted to delete it, pretend it never came. Another part, the part still tethered to the girl who had once believed in him, hesitated. That night, she couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. She paced the living room long after the twins had gone to bed, glancing at the photographs on the shelves, pictures of birthdays, drawings with wobbly letters saying, "Mommy, I love you," paper crowns and plastic medals they'd made for her. Would letting him see them once really undo everything? Or would it open a door she had spent years building walls around? The next morning, she stood outside the school gates, holding their lunchboxes in hand after they'd forgotten them in the car. She spotted them running on the playground, laughing. Seo-jun was chasing Hannah, who darted between the swings like a feather in the wind. And then, her heart stopped. Across the street, parked in a discreet black car, was him. Min-ho. Sitting still in the back seat, eyes glued to the children. He didn't move. Didn't get out. Didn't wave. He just watched. Jia walked toward the car slowly. When the driver saw her, he lowered the window. Min-ho didn't look at her. He couldn't take his eyes off them. "They're real," he said, voice barely audible. "I thought maybe my mind exaggerated it. But, they're real." Jia stood silently for a moment. Then she whispered, "Did you expect them to disappear if you ignored them long enough?" He flinched. "I've watched this scene 100 times in my mind," he said. "How it would feel. What I would say. But nothing prepares you for the moment your past looks at you with your own eyes." She crossed her arms. "You said you just wanted to see them once." He nodded. "I'll go." She hesitated, then said quietly, "They think their father died before they were born." Min-ho's head snapped toward her. "I didn't want them to feel rejected," she continued, her voice cracking. "I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth, that you were alive, that you walked away, that you never asked once if they made it. I deserve their hatred," he said, eyes filled with guilt. "But I want to know them, Jia. Even if they hate me. Even if they never forgive me. I want to stand beside them someday and say, I was a fool, but I came back." She turned to walk away, but paused. "They love trains," she murmured. "And Hannah hates carrots. Seo-jun always shares his lunch even when he's still hungry. They're both afraid of thunder but pretend they're not." Min-ho looked up, stunned by her words. "I'm not saying yes," she added quickly. "But if you're serious, if you really want to know them, you'll wait." And she walked away. In the following weeks, Jia said nothing more. But something began to shift. Min-ho didn't call. Didn't send messages. Didn't send lawyers. But quietly, she saw traces of him. One day, a new set of children's books arrived at the cafe with no note, but each one was about twins and adventures. Another day, a donation was made anonymously to the school library, enough to fund a reading corner and art supplies for a year. The principal mentioned a silent investor who wanted no credit, only progress. Still, Jia said nothing to the twins. Until one evening, as they were drawing in the living room, Hannah asked, "Mommy, have you ever been in love?" Jia looked up, startled. "Where did that come from?" Hannah shrugged. "Just wondering. The stories always say people fall in love, then have kids. Did you love our daddy?" Jia's hand froze over the page. Seo-jun looked up too, curious, silent. "I loved the idea of him," she said softly. "But I don't think he knew how to be loved." "Do you miss him?" Hannah asked. Jia stared at them, the innocent questions of children who had no idea how much pain those answers held. "I missed what could have been," she said gently. "But not what was." The twins nodded slowly, returning to their drawings. That night, Jia sat by the window again, clutching one of the books he'd sent. She remembered the way Min-ho looked at them from the car, like a man who had seen a miracle and wasn't sure if he deserved it. She didn't trust him yet. But maybe, just maybe, he was starting to change. And maybe it was time to let the children begin asking their own questions. But she wasn't ready to hand over their hearts. Not yet. He had to earn them. With more than presents. With patience. And if he truly wanted a place in their lives, he would wait. Because love, real love, didn't demand entrance. But his mind was nowhere near the spreadsheets. A graph flashed on the screen. Applause followed. He blinked. "Sir, One of the directors prompted. Do you approve the expansion plan for Singapore? He looked up, slowly. Table it for now. The room stiffened. That wasn't like him. Minho stood abruptly, closing his laptop with finality. That's all for today. He walked out before anyone dared ask questions. Back in his office, he shut the door and leaned against it. The silence was deafening. This empire, these meetings, this power, it had been his life. But now it all felt hollow. All he could think about was a pair of children laughing on a playground. And the woman who had once been his wife, the one who now stood taller than he ever remembered. He sat down at his desk and pulled open a drawer. Inside was a small drawing, crudely folded, a simple sketch of a train with two stick figures holding hands beside it. It had arrived anonymously, tucked inside a donation envelope for the school fund. No note. No message. But he knew. He ran a thumb over it like it might tear. His chest ached in a way he couldn't explain. He wanted to be part of their lives. Desperately. But what could he offer them now? A man who had once ordered their erasure? He thought of Jia's words. If you want to know them, you'll earn it. The right way. So he waited. And watched from afar. Weeks turned to months. He returned to Busan every Friday evening, staying in the same hotel. Never intruding. Never calling. Just watching. Sometimes from a distance at the school. Other times from the cafe window, as the twins did their homework in the back while Jia spoke to customers, laughing softly, her eyes bright with a peace he had never given her. He started sending small gestures, a watercolor set for Hannah, after seeing her sketch flowers in a notebook, a beginner's microscope for Seo Jun, after overhearing him say he wanted to see what cells look like. No notes. No names. Just anonymous gifts that arrived like whispers. One evening, Minho sat at the hotel bar, untouched whiskey in his hand, when Xian Wu approached. The man was confident, casual in a worn leather jacket, his eyes sharp. I thought it was you, he said, pulling out the bar stool beside Minho. You've been a shadow in this city long enough. Minho didn't look at him. If you're here to defend her, don't bother. She's done a better job than you ever could. Xian Wu smirked bitterly. She shouldn't have to defend herself at all. Silence hung between them. Then Minho finally asked, voice raw, were you there? When she gave birth? I was, Xian Wu said without hesitation. I held her hand when she screamed. Watched her almost die bringing your children into the world. And I stayed up all night making sure they kept breathing, because no one else was there to do it. Minho flinched. Do you think money can fix that? Xian Wu continued, eyes burning. Do you think books and toys erase the years she cried herself to sleep? No, Minho whispered. I know it can't. So why are you really here? Minho finally looked at him, eyes exhausted, haunted. I don't want to fix the past. I just want to be someone they don't have to erase from their future. Xian Wu stared at him. For the first time, there was no contempt in his gaze. Only silence. Then he stood. She's the strongest woman I've ever met, he said. If she lets you in, don't waste it again. The next day, Jia walked into her cafe to find a small brown envelope on her desk. Inside was a folded letter, carefully written in neat script. To Jia. Not to explain. Not to persuade. But to confess. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded the rest. I watch them laugh and I want to laugh too. I see them fall and I want to run to catch them. But I know I don't have the right. Not yet. I wasn't there when it mattered. I was proud, cruel, afraid. I let fear guide me, and it led me to emptiness. Now I know their names. And I whisper them like prayers. Seo Jun, Hannah. I don't deserve a place. But I'll wait. Because I want to earn what I destroyed. Even if it takes the rest of my life. Jia read the letter twice, then sat down. Her heart was a war zone. He wasn't demanding. He wasn't playing victim. He was broken. Honest. Waiting. And that made it harder. Because now, the man she once loved, or maybe still did, in some way, wasn't just a memory or a scar. He was real. And trying. She folded the letter, pressed it to her chest, and closed her eyes. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But maybe, just maybe. Seo-jun and Hannah emerged together, laughing, running toward her with matching backpacks bouncing behind them. She smiled gently, kneeling to straighten Hannah's scarf and brush wind-tossed hair from Seo-jun's face. "Can we go to the pier today?" Hannah asked, her eyes sparkling. "They're selling roasted chestnuts again." Jia hesitated for a moment, distracted, then nodded. "All right. Just for a little while." As they walked, she couldn't stop her mind from drifting to the letter tucked in her coat pocket. She had read it every night since it arrived. It never changed. But the way she felt when reading it did. For years, she had trained her heart to see Minho as someone distant, a memory with sharp edges. But now, he was close. Present. And waiting. She watched her children skip ahead, their laughter echoing across the docks. How much longer could she pretend they didn't deserve to know the full truth? That evening, she received a call. It was from the school principal. "Miss Yoon," the woman said cautiously. "A man came today asking questions about the twins." Jia's stomach dropped. "What kind of questions?" "He said he was their father. That he wasn't looking to make a scene, only to confirm they were safe. We didn't give him anything, of course. But, he left this." Jia drove to the school in silence, her fingers clenched around the steering wheel. The sun had dipped below the horizon, and the headlights cast long shadows on the road. The principal handed her a sealed envelope. The same handwriting. Inside, 2 drawings. One of a lion and a tiger standing side by side under a tree. And the other, a simple sketch of a woman holding 2 children, surrounded by stars. No message. Just images. Jia stared at them for a long time. Her hands trembled slightly, but she didn't cry. Not yet. The next morning, she stood in front of her children with her heart pounding so loud she could barely breathe. "Can we talk about something?" she asked gently. Seo-jun looked up from his cereal. Hannah stopped tying her shoes. Jia sat down across from them. "There's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time. About your father." Both children froze. Hannah's voice was barely a whisper. "You told us he passed away." Jia swallowed hard. "I did. Because I didn't know how else to explain, something I didn't understand myself back then." Seo-jun frowned. "So, he's alive?" She nodded slowly. Silence. "Does he know about us?" Hannah asked. Jia nodded again. "He knows now. He found out not long ago. He's been watching from far away. Not to spy. Just, hoping to be close without hurting us again." Seo-jun's face was unreadable. "Why did he leave?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Because he was afraid. He didn't believe I was telling the truth when I said I was pregnant. He thought I was trying to trap him." Hannah's lip quivered. "That's mean." "It was," Jia whispered. "It broke me. But people can change. And I think, he's trying to." Seo-jun's voice was sharp now, clearer. "Does that mean he wants to be our dad now?" Jia didn't answer right away. She reached across the table, gently holding both of their hands. "He wants to meet you. Not as your dad. Not right away. Just as someone who made a terrible mistake and wants to make it right. But only if you want to." Hannah looked at her brother, eyes wide. "I want to meet him." Seo-jun stared at the table for a long time before finally whispering, "Only if you're there too." Jia smiled through the tears that had begun to fall. I'll be there. Every step. The following Sunday, they met at a quiet park by the sea, the same one Jia used to walk alone when she was pregnant, afraid and lost. Minho arrived early. He wore no suit, no mask. Just a soft sweater, dark jeans, and eyes that carried both fear and hope. He stood the moment he saw them. Jia walked ahead, holding both children's hands. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Minho knelt down slowly, meeting the children's eyes. "Hi," he said softly. "I'm Minho." The twins looked at him carefully. Hannah tilted her head. "You look nervous," she said. Minho let out a shaky laugh. "I am." Seojun asked, "Are you really our father?" Minho looked at Jia. She gave a tiny nod. He turned back to them, voice raw. "Yes. I am. And I've made mistakes, so many. But the one thing I know for sure is that you two are the best part of anything I've ever done." They said nothing for a long moment. Then Hannah, shy but curious, stepped forward and reached into her bag. She pulled out a picture, the drawing of the lion and tiger he'd left at the school. "You drew this, didn't you?" she asked. He nodded. "I did." She handed it back to him, then said softly, "I like tigers." Minho smiled, eyes glassy. "Me too." Seojun stood beside his sister. "We'll talk to you. But, don't make her cry again." Minho's voice caught. "Never again." Jia stood back, heart aching as she watched her children speak with the man who once destroyed her world, and who now seemed desperate to rebuild it piece by fragile piece. Something had changed. The wall was still there. But there was now a door. Minho sat on the edge of the bench, his hands resting on his knees, trying to hold still as his children observed him like a puzzle they weren't sure they wanted to solve. Jia stood nearby, arms crossed over her chest, not as a wall, but as a witness. Seojun was the first to speak again. "So, what do you do?" His tone wasn't playful, but it wasn't cold either. It was the voice of a boy testing boundaries. Minho turned toward him gently. "I run a company. Mostly computers and technology. I work with people who design things that make life easier." Hannah squinted. "Like video games?" Minho chuckled softly. "Not exactly. But I can probably get you some." "Really?" Her eyes lit up. Jia cut in quickly, her voice firm. "We're not here to make promises." Minho nodded, instantly. "Of course. I didn't mean it like that." He looked at Hannah. "Only if your mom says it's okay." "Always." Hannah tilted her head. "You're not like I imagined." "How did you imagine me?" he asked, carefully. "I didn't," she replied. "Because I thought you were dead." The word struck him with such force that he forgot how to breathe for a second. "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking. I deserve that." "You didn't come for us," Seojun added, his voice low. You knew Mom was pregnant and you told her to get rid of us." Jia's gaze dropped, pain rising in her chest again. She hadn't told them everything, not in such raw detail. But children listen. They feel. They always know more than they let on. Minho bowed his head. "I did," he said honestly. "I was afraid. I was selfish. And I've spent every day since wishing I could go back and do it right." There was no excuse. He wouldn't pretend to have one. Hannah frowned, studying him with eyes too old for her age. "Do you want to live with us now?" "No," he said instantly. "No, I don't want to take anything away. You have a life. A good one. I only want to know you, a little at a time, if that's okay." They looked at him, then at each other. Finally, Seojun said quietly, "Maybe we can play a game sometime?" Minho's chest nearly burst. I'd love that. Jia finally spoke. Just understand this isn't a trial run, Minho. They've grown up in peace. I won't let anything disturb that. I know, he said. And I'll respect every limit you set. He turned to the children. Maybe someday, you'll want to visit where I work. Or ask about my family. Or even where I used to live. And if not, that's okay too. I'll never force anything. Hannah stepped closer, tugging lightly on Jia's sleeve. Mommy, can he come next weekend? Just for ice cream? Jia looked down at her, caught off guard. Minho didn't move. He didn't even smile. He just watched, the hope in his eyes flickering like a candle in the wind. Only if you want that, Jia said carefully. Seo-jun nodded. Only if we pick the flavor. Minho let out a breath, smiling for the first time, the kind that came from deep, painful places. Deal. They talked for a little while longer, light things. Favorite books. What kind of pets they'd want. The conversation flowed in short, cautious bursts. Like dipping toes into water neither side was sure they could trust. As the sun lowered behind the waves, Jia called gently, time to go. Minho stood, watching the twins run ahead a few steps. Jia lingered. He turned to her, unsure if he should speak. But she broke the silence first. I saw the drawing. His throat tightened. I didn't know if they'd recognize it. They did. She paused. They see you. A beat. But don't confuse that with trust. That has to be earned. I know, he whispered. I'm not asking for anything else. Jia searched his face, and for the first time, she saw not the tycoon who mocked her, not the man who shattered her heart, but someone, smaller. A man holding his mistakes like stones in his pockets, trying to stay afloat. Then earn it, she said. Slowly. Honestly. With them. And with me. He nodded. She walked away, the children catching her hands in theirs. Minho stood alone, bathed in the fading light, his heart torn open in 1,000 ways, and yet, for the first time in years, something inside him breathed. This wasn't redemption. Jia opened the cafe early that morning. She had barely slept, her mind looping through possibilities. What if the twins pulled away? What if he said something wrong? What if, deep down, she still hated him more than she thought? But when she saw him standing across the street, holding 2 small paper bags, one marked vanilla and the other strawberry, just like Hannah had said, something inside her cracked and softened at once. He didn't cross the street. He waited. Jia motioned gently, and only then did Minho step forward, careful and slow, as though each movement carried the weight of an apology. Inside, Hannah was already at the counter, feet swinging beneath the stool. Seo-jun sat beside her with his book, pretending not to be nervous. Minho entered with a soft, "Good morning." The children turned. Hannah lit up first. You brought it? He lifted the bags. Exactly how you said. No surprises. Good, she grinned, hopping off the stool to inspect it. I don't like surprises. Seo-jun still didn't look up. Minho crouched beside him. I heard you like puzzles. I like science, Seo-jun muttered. Even better, Minho said. I was terrible at science. Maybe you can teach me something. The boy peeked up at him, just for a second. Jia watched from behind the counter. The way Minho knelt, not like a father staking claim, but like a man borrowing time. She could see the tightness in his shoulders, the way he braced for rejection. Did you always like strawberry? Hannah asked, licking the edge of her scoop. Minho smiled faintly. Since I was your age. My mother used to make me strawberry milk when I was sick. Where is she? Hannah asked. His smile faltered. She passed away a few years ago. Oh, she said softly. I'm sorry. He nodded. She would have loved to meet you. Silence lingered in the air, not uncomfortable, but thick with things unspoken. Then Seo Jun spoke, his voice low. Do you still work in Seoul? Yes, Minho said, surprised. But I come here on weekends now. Why? To see you, he said honestly. Only if you want me to. Seo Jun didn't answer right away. Instead, he asked, why did you say Mom was lying? Jia froze behind the counter. Her heart clenched. She had hoped, maybe foolishly, that question wouldn't come for a while. Minho looked at his son, truly looked at him, and his voice cracked as he said, because I didn't believe in anything back then. Not her. Not myself. I didn't know how to love someone without thinking they wanted something from me. Did she? Seo Jun asked, eyes sharp. No, Minho whispered. She wanted to love me. And I ran away from it. Seo Jun stared at him, then looked at Jia, whose eyes shimmered with tears she refused to let fall. Don't do that again, the boy said. Minho nodded, voice thick. Never again. Later that afternoon, they walked along the boardwalk together. Not like a family, not yet, but like something leaning toward it. Minho carried the twins' paper boats in one hand, the wind tugging softly at his coat. Jia walked a few steps behind, watching her children run ahead, calling out to the waves. And then, she saw it. A photographer across the street. Camera lens pointed right at them. She froze. Minho noticed too. He turned sharply, his jaw tightening. The man ducked away. Jia rushed forward. Did you bring the media here? No, he said quickly. I swear I didn't. Then how did they know? Her voice rose. How did someone with a press camera just happen to be here the same day you finally meet your children? Jia, I didn't, she stepped back. Do you know what this could do? If people find out who they are, that they're your children, their faces could be everywhere. I would never, you once said they didn't matter to your image, she snapped. Are you changing that now that they make you look good? His face went pale. I'm not that man anymore. No, she whispered. Then prove it. Find out who that photographer was. And if I ever see our children's faces on any screen, I will vanish with them and you will never find us again. He looked gutted. I promise you, I didn't arrange that. I'll handle it. She turned away, heart pounding, anger and fear and betrayal all rising in one choking wave. This was why she had kept her world hidden. Because peace was a delicate thing, and the moment it was touched by his world, it trembled. When they reached the car, Seo Jun looked up at her. Is everything okay? She knelt down, kissing his forehead. Yes, baby. Just a little wind today. But inside, she was already locking every door, bracing every wall. Minho watched her drive away, the taste of her fury still fresh on his tongue. He pulled out his phone, called his head of security. Find out who was following me. I want a name in 1 hour. And make sure no one, leaks anything about them. Not to investors. Not to shareholders. Not to anyone. He hung up, jaw clenched. Jia sat in the dark of her living room, only the soft hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock keeping her company. The twins were already asleep upstairs. The paper boats they'd played with earlier now rested, soaked and forgotten, by the kitchen sink. The image of that photographer hadn't left her mind. She hadn't told the children. Not yet. But it lingered, a shadow in the corner of peace. Her phone vibrated on the table. She hesitated before picking it up. Minho, it was a freelance tabloid scout. He followed me from Seoul. I didn't know. I've already paid him off and had the footage deleted. I gave him a legal warning. If he ever shows his face again, I'll bury him in lawsuits. She read the message once. Then again. It didn't calm her. Not entirely. because no matter how sincere he sounded, the damage was always closer than he thought. She had lived in a quiet world, a protected one. Now, with one photograph, all of it could come undone. The next day, she didn't respond to his message. Nor the one that came after. Please, let me talk to you. Just you. No children. Just you. She waited 2 more days before replying. Tomorrow. 6 p.m., the old garden behind the bakery. Come alone. The garden was hidden, overgrown, small, wrapped in vines and the scent of rosemary. It was where she went when the world became too loud. A place no cameras would think to find. When he arrived, she was already sitting on the bench, her umbrella resting beside her, a soft breeze pulling strands of her hair across her face. He approached cautiously. No coat, no umbrella, just the soft weight of apology in every step. I didn't know he was following me, he said first. I swear to you. I believe you, she said quietly. He blinked, surprised. But I also believe, she continued, that the world you live in brings danger without you even realizing it. Minho sat beside her, keeping just enough distance not to crowd her. I tried to keep it away, he said. I've shielded them from every possible angle. My assistant doesn't know. My investors don't know. My father doesn't know. Jia turned to him, eyes sharp. Your father? The one who arranged our marriage like a trade deal? He winced. He still thinks you left and vanished. He believes I was the victim. Her laughter was bitter. Of course he does. Minho leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I didn't come here to defend him. Or myself. I came because I need you to know I'm not here to play house or pose for redemption. I'm here, because I can't undo what I've done, but I won't walk away from it again. Jia studied him. He looked older. Not in his face, but in the way he carried himself. There was something raw beneath the usual composure, a quiet desperation, held carefully behind his eyes. Do you know, she said softly, how many times I wished you would come back and say something like that? He swallowed hard. Too many. And now that you have, she added, I don't know what to do with it. You don't have to do anything, he whispered. I just needed to say it. Needed you to hear it, not the part of you that smiles for the kids or nods politely. You. The woman who used to look at me like I was worth loving. Her breath hitched. That woman, she said, voice trembling, died the night you told her to erase her children. Minho's eyes burned. She died, Jia continued, and someone stronger took her place. Someone who had to learn how to sleep alone. How to carry life while drowning in grief. Someone who stitched herself back together while you went on pretending she never existed. I never forgot you, he said, his voice breaking. Even when I hated you, even when I convinced myself it was all your fault, you never left my head. She turned away, wiping a tear before it could fall. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small, square box. I don't expect anything from you. But this belonged to my mother. Jia looked at him, confused. It's not a gift, he clarified. It's something I want Hannah to have. When she's ready. My mother wore it the day I was born. She believed in protecting things. People. Souls. He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver pendant shaped like a moon, with tiny engravings around the edge. Jia's breath caught. She would have wanted her granddaughter to have it, he said. Not because of blood. But because she's light. They both are. Jia touched the edge of the box, carefully closing it. I'm not ready, she whispered. Not for co-parenting. Not for shared weekends. Not even for birthdays. I understand. But, she added, softer now, I want them to know where they came from. Not just their pain. But their roots. The good ones. Minho nodded. Then I'll wait. Like I said I would. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for a brief moment, something shifted in her chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But perhaps, the beginning of it. A raindrop landed on her hand. Then another. She stood, brushing off her coat. You should go, she said. The kids are waiting. Can I see them next weekend? She nodded. But only for an hour. He smiled, standing with her. I'll be there, he said. As he walked away, Jia stayed beneath the olive tree, letting the rain fall over her in silence. He was coming. For the first time, not just to see them from across a park, not to watch them build paper boats, but to sit with them, to listen, to exist inside their world, even if just for 1 hour. Jia smoothed her hair one last time, though it wasn't for vanity. It was armor. A reminder that she was still in control of this fragile moment. The doorbell rang. Hannah jumped to her feet, wide-eyed. I'll get it, she squealed. Jia's voice stopped her. Wait. She walked to the door herself, her heartbeat tapping in her ears like thunder. When she opened it, Minho stood there, holding nothing but a small photo album and a hesitant smile. No gifts, she asked, her tone light but testing. No gifts, he replied. Just stories. She stepped aside. The twins rushed forward, Hannah immediately latching onto his arm, pulling him toward the living room. Come on. We made a fort. A fort, he said, laughing as she dragged him forward. That's serious business. Seo Jun followed behind more slowly, but there was something different in his gaze, less resistance, more curiosity. The living room had been transformed. Blankets draped across chairs, a tunnel made of cushions, and fairy lights clipped to the edges of bookshelves. Minho crouched to fit inside, awkward in his movement, careful not to disturb the fragile structure. I feel like I'm in a secret club, he said. You are, Hannah grinned. But you have to pass the test. What kind of test? Favorite animal. Go. He blinked, then answered, penguin. Why? Seo Jun asked, arms crossed. They wear suits all the time, Minho replied. But they're still funny. Both kids laughed, and something in Jia's chest loosened just a little. They talked about school, about favorite books, about a math quiz Seo Jun had aced. Hannah showed off a glittery bracelet she'd made. Minho listened to everything, no interruptions, no phones, no rush. When there was a pause, he reached for the album beside him. I brought this, he said softly. It's not for you to keep. Just to look at. If you want. He placed it on the coffee table. Hannah reached it first, flipping open the cover. Inside were pictures of a younger Minho, a child playing with a dog, a teenager standing next to a woman with warm eyes and a soft smile. Is that your mom? Hannah asked. He nodded. Her name was Seo Yun. She looks nice. She was the kindest person I ever knew, he said, voice thickening. She used to make up bedtime stories every night. And she always gave my dad the burnt toast, because she said it was good for the heart. Jia turned her face slightly away. The children kept flipping pages. There were pictures of Minho in college, with friends, then alone in an office, the city skyline behind him. Why do you look so serious in this one? Seo Jun asked. Minho leaned forward. Because I thought that having power meant not showing weakness. I didn't know yet that love is strength too. The room fell quiet. Hannah whispered, you look sad in that one. It was a photo of him sitting by himself at a long table, a birthday cake untouched. That was my 34th birthday, Minho said, his voice barely above a breath. No one came. I had everything, and still felt empty. Seo Jun looked up. You don't look empty now. Minho met his son's gaze, and something flickered there, something that had no name, but filled the space between them like the slow unfurling of light after a long, cold night. I don't feel empty anymore, Minho said. Jia watched all of it. Every expression. Every breath. And when the hour drew to a close, she stood and spoke gently. "Time's up." The twins groaned in unison. "Already?" "We had a deal," she said, smiling softly. Minho rose to his feet, dusted off his knees. He turned to the children. "Thank you. For today. You don't know what it means to me." Hannah hugged him before he could react. "You're welcome." Seo Jun offered his hand, a handshake, firm, thoughtful. Minho gripped it with care. "You're a strong one," he said. "So is Mom," Seo Jun replied. "We learned from her." Minho turned to Jia. "May I speak to you for a moment?" She nodded, stepping outside onto the porch. The wind tugged at her sweater, and she crossed her arms to stay warm. He stood beside her, not too close. "I didn't know what I was walking into today," he said. "But, thank you for letting me in." "You did well," she said, eyes on the sky. "They're opening their hearts to you." He hesitated. "I still have so far to go," he said. "But I'd like to be there. For everything I missed. As much as I'm allowed to be." Jia looked at him then, and for the first time in years, she didn't see the man who broke her. She saw the one who was trying to heal, not only for himself, but for all of them. "I can't make promises," she said. "But I'm not closing the door." A beat of silence passed between them. Then Minho said, "They deserve to know everything one day. About how I failed you. How I failed them. I'll tell them myself. When they're ready." Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. As he turned to leave, she called out softly. "Minho." He looked back. "I think your mother would have liked them." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. He pulled over in front of the hospital. Not just any hospital, the hospital. The one where Jia had nearly died. Where his children had taken their first breath. Where he had never shown up. He walked through the front entrance slowly, unsure what he was looking for. The fluorescent lights hummed above him, and the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and something too clean to be comforting. He approached the reception desk. "Excuse me. I'm looking for records. From 6 years ago. A woman named Yoon Ji-ah. She would have been admitted for childbirth, twins." The nurse blinked. "Your family?" He hesitated, then nodded. "I'm the father." A few calls were made. A few minutes passed. Then he was guided down a quiet hallway and handed a sealed folder in a private room. Minho sat. He didn't open it immediately. His hands trembled. When he did, the first page hit him like a train. Emergency C-section. Preeclampsia. Severe hemorrhaging. Survival window, critical. His heart stopped reading. The next page, notes scribbled in pen. She had signed a release, refusing to list a second contact. She had been alone. Then came the neonatal report. Infants placed in NICU. Preterm. Underweight. Observed for 72 hours. There was a note from a nurse. A small one. Mother spoke to the twins every hour. Refused to sleep. Kept saying, "You made it. I'll keep you safe." Minho gripped the paper, his knuckles white. He imagined her, pale, bleeding, barely holding on, whispering to 2 tiny lives in incubators. Alone. Unforgiven. Unloved. He stood suddenly, folding the documents into his chest like they might shatter. He thanked the nurse, barely able to speak. Back in his car, he sat for a long time, staring at nothing. And then, for the first time in over a decade, Kang Minho wept. Not for what he had lost. But for what he had failed to see. The next day, he returned to the bakery. Jia was inside, wiping down a table, her hair pulled back, sleeves rolled up. She didn't see him at first. When she did, she paused. Her eyes scanned him like they already sensed something had changed. "Can we talk?" he asked. She nodded once, setting down the cloth. They stepped outside. The morning was crisp, the air smelling of bread and sea salt. "I went to the hospital," he said. Jia froze. "Why?" "I needed to know the truth. All of it. Not just what I've imagined. Not what I thought I knew." Her expression didn't soften. But it cracked, just slightly. "I saw the report," he continued, voice trembling. "You almost died. And you were alone. You did everything without me." "I didn't do it to be a hero," she whispered. "I did it because no one else would." He nodded, swallowing the ache in his throat. "I read a note. From a nurse. She said you never stopped talking to them. Even when you couldn't stand. Even when," his voice broke. Jia looked away. "I thought if I closed my eyes too long, I wouldn't wake up. And they'd be alone." Minho took a step closer. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice shaking, not with guilt, but something deeper, remorse. "I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I failed all of you in the most unforgivable way." She didn't speak. She couldn't. "I've spent so long building walls," he went on, "that I didn't see you were bleeding on the other side of them." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. "I wrote them letters," he said. "For Seojun and Hannah. Just something to keep. Not to read now. Maybe not for years. But something honest. From me." Jia took the envelope slowly, her hands brushing his. "What changed?" she asked softly. "I saw what you survived," he said. "And I realized, I didn't just abandon you. I abandoned myself. I could have had this beautiful life with you. With them. But I ran from it." He stepped back, his voice breaking one last time. "And now, all I can do, is try to deserve the chance to walk behind it." She looked at the letter, then at him. "I can't promise you anything," she said. "But maybe, someday, they'll read it. And maybe they'll understand." He nodded. "And you?" he asked, quietly. She took a breath. "I'm still learning how to forgive you," she said. "But I'm not trying to hate you anymore. That's a start." He didn't smile. He didn't push. He just bowed his head. Seojun sat curled on the living room floor, surrounded by sheets of construction paper and glue. He was working on a card, a project he hadn't let anyone see. Jia watched them both with a heaviness in her chest that hadn't gone away, not even after all these months. Even as the chaos had softened and Minho had begun to show up, consistently, quietly, patiently, the ache of old wounds still pulsed, deep and slow. The envelope he had left remained tucked inside her nightstand, unopened. She had told the children they could read it when they were ready. They hadn't asked yet. But Jia had read hers. Not the letter itself, she hadn't had the courage. But the name on the front, "To the woman who saved us all." She blinked away the tears and stepped back inside. That evening, Minho arrived with no fanfare, no announcements. He'd started coming by once a week, invited only when Jia said yes. Sometimes they walked on the beach. Sometimes they played board games. Sometimes they just sat in silence while the kids read books at their feet. But tonight felt different. There was a stillness to the air, as if the world was holding its breath. Jia opened the door before he knocked. Minho smiled, soft and uncertain. "Hi." She stepped aside. "Come in." He hesitated. "Is this a good time?" "No," she said quietly. "But I want you here anyway." His smile faltered, replaced by something deeper, something close to understanding. As he entered, Hannah ran to him, arms outstretched. "You came." "I told you I would," he said, lifting her into a hug. "Did you bring the storybook?" "Right here," he said, patting his bag. Seo Jun looked up from the floor. You're late. Minho grinned. Only by 3 minutes. Still late, the boy mumbled, but a ghost of a smile played on his lips. Jia stood by the doorway, watching them. The way Minho sat cross-legged on the floor, letting the kids climb over him like he was a jungle gym. The way he listened, answered every question, remembered the smallest things they said from the week before. And when they asked for a story, he opened the book and read with a voice steady and warm. After they were tucked in, 2 little lights glowing beneath blankets upstairs, Jia walked into the kitchen. Minho followed her, slower now. He could feel it, something unspoken in the air. She poured tea. Set a cup down for him. He didn't touch it. I read the note, she said finally. His breath caught. The one for you? She nodded. You wrote, the woman who saved us all. He swallowed. Because it's true. No, she said, her voice quiet but firm. I saved my children. And I survived. But I didn't save you. He looked down. I didn't mean it like, I know what you meant, she interrupted. But Minho, no one can be your redemption but you. He looked up at her then, eyes filled with that soft ache she had come to recognize, not pain from pride, but pain from awakening. I don't want to be redeemed anymore, he said, voice raw. I just want to be real. For them. For you. For the man I couldn't be back then. Jia walked closer, setting her cup down. I've seen the change in you, she admitted. But it's not just about what you're doing now. It's about what you don't do anymore. You don't run. You don't hide. You don't blame. That matters more than you know. He nodded, his throat too tight to speak. I still get scared, she confessed. Every time they laugh too loudly. Every time they ask a question about the past I can't answer without bleeding. She paused, breathing carefully. But I'm learning that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing something better each time the wound tries to open. Minho reached into his coat pocket. Slowly. Deliberately. I didn't plan to do this tonight, he said. But if I don't say it now, I don't know if I ever will. He held out a ring. Not a flashy one. No diamonds. Just a thin silver band, etched with tiny waves. The kind of ring you wear not to be seen, but to be remembered. Jia stared at it, her breath gone. I'm not asking you to marry me, he said. Not yet. Not now. Maybe not ever, if that's what you decide. Her lips parted, but no words came. I'm giving you this, he continued, because I want you to know that no matter what form this takes, family, friend, partner, co-parent, I choose you. I choose this life. Again and again. He placed the ring on the table between them. Then stepped back. I won't ask for your answer tonight. Jia stood frozen. The ring sat between them like a memory reborn, not a plea, not a prize. Just a promise. She looked up at him. And for the first time, her eyes didn't carry fear or fury or even confusion. The silver ring still rested between them. Neither had moved it. Neither had spoken of it again. I used to imagine this, Jia said softly, breaking the silence. Us. Sitting here. The kids asleep upstairs. You, not being a ghost. Minho's breath caught. And now that it's real? She looked up at him, eyes shining but unreadable. Now I don't know if it's a dream I still want to live. He lowered his gaze, the words striking deep. I don't expect you to, he said. Not after what I did. A beat of silence passed. I'm not the same woman, she whispered. And you're not the same man. He nodded slowly. That's true. But the past, her voice caught in her throat. It still finds its way into the room when I least expect it. Minho reached across the table, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. I know, he said. And I'm not here to erase it. I just want to build something beside it. She studied him. What does that even look like? I don't know, he admitted. But I'm willing to find out, even if it takes years. They sat in silence for a moment, the ticking of the old clock on the wall the only sound. Then Jia asked something she had never dared to ask before. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had believed me that day? He didn't flinch. Every day. What do you see? Minho's voice lowered to a whisper. I see you in the hospital bed, not alone. I see me holding your hand, waiting for our children's first cry. I see birthday candles, lost teeth, scraped knees I could have kissed better. I see a home full of noise and arguments and laughter and love. I see a man I could have been if I hadn't been so scared. Jia's eyes filled with tears. Why did it take so long? He looked away, ashamed. Because I didn't know how to be vulnerable. Because I thought love made me weak. Because the version of love I knew was always tied to control. She nodded slowly, understanding more than she wanted to admit. My father taught me that love was earned through sacrifice, she said. So I gave everything. And when you threw it away, I thought maybe I wasn't worth keeping. Minho's jaw tightened. Don't say that. I'm not that woman anymore, she said. But some part of her still lives in me. And she's scared of what might happen if I let you all the way back in. He stood slowly and walked to her side. Then, kneeling, not in desperation, but in reverence, he looked up at her. Then don't let me all the way in, he said. Not yet. Just, let me walk beside you. Let me be the man who doesn't ask for your heart, but earns a place in your life, day by day. Jia stared down at him, her breath shaky. A tear slipped down her cheek. She reached for the ring. Held it in her palm. But instead of sliding it on, she closed her hand around it and whispered, if one day I wear this, it'll be because I chose to, not out of hope, not out of guilt, but because I truly believe in us again. Minho nodded, his eyes misted. I'll wait, he said. For as long as it takes. The soft patter of footsteps broke the silence. Hannah appeared at the top of the stairs, rubbing her eyes. Mommy? Jia turned, voice gentle. What is it, sweetheart? I had a dream, she said. You and Daddy were in it. Jia's heart skipped. Minho straightened but didn't speak. What kind of dream? Jia asked. Hannah came down the stairs slowly, clutching her stuffed rabbit. You were both in a garden, she said. And there was a tree with silver leaves. And we were all there. Me, Seo-jun, and you were laughing. Like really laughing. All of us. Minho closed his eyes, a tear escaping before he could stop it. Jia pulled Hannah into her arms, holding her tight. The little girl whispered against her shoulder, can that dream be real someday? Jia kissed her daughter's hair. Then looked up. At the man who had once left her in pieces. At the man who now stood before her, whole, flawed, but full of light. And she whispered, almost to herself, maybe someday it can. And for the first time since it all began, the past no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a path.